welcome to Perimenopausal Athletes and Beyond Masterclass series, bringing together experts in mindset, nutrition, training, recovery, and I'm going to say longevity, and breath and biohacking. Because that's who we are joined today with Zora Benhamou. And welcome, Zora. I'm so thrilled you could be here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It really is an honor, and it's a pleasure to be able to talk about longevity and biohacking, my favorite topics.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm most excited about is really helping female athletes in perimenopause and beyond understand what it is, because biohacking seems a little scary to me. When I say, I'm just like, I'm not into hacking, I'm into the natural world. But you're going to help clarify that for us today. But before you do that, I need to introduce you a little bit more, just so people understand where you're coming from and your expertise. So Zora has a master's of gerontology from the University of Southern California. So for those of you like me that are like, okay, so Zora is a gerontologist. So what is that? She really, and you can correct me, but when I was summarizing and looking at things, you studied the physiological, the psychological, the social, and probably cultural factors that really influence aging, how we age. And you really have taken it to a level of how do we age in health? How do we age with vitality? And then you've added a couple more components to it, because I'm sure, I don't know which one was which, but then you went to precision nutrition to do as specialization in sport and fitness. I love it that you went and became a senior instructor for Oxygen Advantage, which was Dr. Patrick McEwen, and it's all about the breath work and really coming into that. And this is part of your biohacking. You've done Dr. Stacy Sims' Menopause for Athletes course, bringing in that real focus of the age expertise. I mean, isn't this sounding so amazing? We're going to get to what you have to say, because really this is us. Right? This is who we are and who you're serving. You have founded the website hackmyage.com. You have a podcast, Hack My Age, and is the author of the Longevity Master Plan and Cookbook, Eating for Longevity. So really, you have the passion, the energy, the skills, the education to really support women over 50 to combat fatigue, menopausal symptoms, and other signs of aging. So welcome. Wow. That sounds so great. Like when you hear it, just like, yeah, that's my life.
Did a lot. I packed in a lot in a short period of time, considering, and I think part of it is all my life I've been studying, but you got the gerontology bit spot on. Most people don't know what a gerontologist is and what they do. So well done for you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I do like to research. I'm like, okay, well, let's really understand what that brings to us. And we're going to pack in a ton into, 30 to 40 minutes here. So let's get into it. And let's just start with the most basic question, like, what is biohacking? And then how is it specifically different for women?
Yeah, so biohacking, a lot of people don't know what that word is, and it just refers to a group of people who are making changes in their lifestyle, their diet, environment, looking for a physiological change on the inside. And they're usually referring to people who are already healthy and they want to be optimizing their health. They're looking for health optimization, which is different because basically we look at our blood work, we look at different parameters from different gadgets that we wear. So we're there analyzing, assessing, and then we're reassessing a protocol, a technique, a supplement, whatever it is. We don't just kind of go, woo, let's see what happens when we take this and whether you feel or don't feel. We measure and we assess. So we're really much like to follow the data. And it doesn't mean you have to, but that's kind of the difference. And so when we go to a doctor and the doctor says, oh, your blood work is in the normal range, a biohacker may say, oh shit, sorry, can I swear?
Yeah, it's
sorry about that. They may go, we're a little bit disappointed because say if you're in the US, the average American is sick. So if you're in the average normal category, you're sick. So we would say, oh, we want to be in the optimal ranges, not just the normal ranges, because we want to be healthy, or we want to be, the best that we can be. So a biohacker would tend to, we have the foundation of all our, sleep and stress and eating well and exercise and all that. But then we have sort of at the top, the other tools that we use and gadgets to assess. We may do things like peptides, which I can explain later, or PRP, and different treatments and all kind of magnetic stuff attached to us, and trying to optimize the health but measuring it and assessing it. And that's kind of the difference between them and just, being healthy or trying to have healthy habits.
I have never heard that. Like I honestly thought that biohacking were like it's all about the tools, not as a way of being.
Yeah,
That's really
yes,
different.
it's the most important. So I always look at biohacking as a pyramid. So the base, the foundation of that is all the stuff that we know. We got to eat well, and whatever that means for you. Okay, there's no diet or diet plan that we follow. We know that everyone's individual. And so you got to find out whatever that is. Then we have the exercise or movement component, and then you have the sleep management, stress management. But we also have the components of just the basic ancestral wisdom of having community, having a purpose in life, your social network. All of these things are super important, especially as a gerontologist, as we really confirm that component. And then we have the middle part of the pyramid, which is maybe supplements or some kind of peptide, things that you wouldn't really necessarily need a doctor for. You can just go to order stuff online and, pretty safe. And then you have the top pyramid, which is maybe more aggressive, or risky protocols that you would need doctor's guidance for. So not that middle and that top part of the pyramid, in my opinion, don't work, or they don't really work as well if you don't have that foundation. And people want that hack, they want the quick fix. And there are miracles out there in those middle and top tiers, but really I always stress to people, you can't just do the hack without having the foundation. So please get that right. And many times you get that right, you don't need the middle and the top tiers, but if you have that foundation, it's not quite getting you where you want, because we have different genetics, different problems, different things in our lives. Well, then you use those middle and the top tiers as sort of a supplement or addition to an already healthy diet and lifestyle, and all the other stuff. So yeah.
Well, and it's particularly interesting for athletes because we do add on an additional stress. It's a good stress, but sometimes we need a little bit more help to understand what that additional stress means for our health and how to stay in health. So I think that that's really interesting, because general population may, foundation, keep working on the foundation. And then what you're saying is like, okay, so if we have this foundation and we're trying to optimize, then these are methodologies and tools that we can do to do that. And it might be particularly interesting for athletes. Now, how is it different for women, do you think?
Yeah, so the biohacking world has been dominated by men, and has been dominated by younger men. So very often we've been doing these protocols and the hacks and all that with a man's protocol, or because the science, as we probably many of you already know, has so much science has been done on men, mostly men. And it's only in the recent past that we now starting to have studies done on women. It wasn't mandatory to have women, and women are complicated. So no scientists ever want to do that, because we have menopause and hormonal changes and periods, and we get pregnant, and then we just, bunk up the whole study. And so they try to stick with men, right? So that's really unfair. So our vaccinations, our drugs, and all these other things coming out, and protocols based on a man. And what scientists are finding is that when you do these experiments on women, we have different outcomes. Not always, but many times we'll have a different outcome. And then when you talk about a female going through menopause, well, then there's a whole other component, a whole other outcome. And then you get an athletic woman on top of it. There you go, because you could be doing studies on sedentary women, sedentary 30-year-olds or sedentary 80-year-olds, or although really there's not many studies on an 80-year-olds at all, but
Right.
the point is that you can't compare the outcome of a 30-year-old with a 60-year-old woman, even if they're their own women as well. So it's really hard to make a study, and maybe it's done on a sedentary obese man, and then try to apply that to an athletic older woman. And and that's what happens in science. That's what happens in this health and wellness world. We get the study, yay, and we all get into it. And then half of us go, why isn't this working for us? Because half of us are women, or half of us are athletic women, or whatever it is. So that's why we need to change the protocols of, say, fasting or ice bathing or exercise, because we have periods, we have cycles, men don't, we have times where we can optimize our health in terms of the outcome of winning a race or whatever that be, because based on your cycle. And so what a biohacking woman would want to do is like, okay, let's optimize that, and let's train according to our cycle. Let's fast according to our cycle. So for example, fasting, we would say, well, try not to fast the week before your period, because that's a high stress. And that's what Dr. Stacy Sims would say, hey, you may want to, have that recovery period, treat yourself really kindly, keep your training a little bit lower the week before your period, because when you have your period, actually some people are actually having the best outcomes. So, but you got to sort of follow the protocol. And that would be a biohack, right? To use your cycle, know when to train, know when to rest, know when to fast. Men don't have to think about it. They'll have the same outcome, because they don't have these, they have this 24-hour cycle. We have these, monthly cycles. So we're different. That's why we need to take these things a little bit differently. And again, experimenting on yourself, even though I say that, well, you try it and you may have a different outcome. And that's what a biohacker does, is an N of one experiment. We just look at ourselves. We don't care about anyone else. We just want to know, does this work for me? And I think most of the population would agree that they don't care if it works for 100,000 people. Does it work for them? And that's where you want to experiment on yourself and know yourself. And that's where the data is fun to bring in as well.
Oh, this is so great. Okay. So yes, and especially through perimenopause, when that nice cycle that, hope, like I hope for most women, they have the experience of a nice, beautiful rhythmic cycle. I didn't, which caused serious health implications. But if you were on track for health, then, and you had that nice cycle, and then you come into perimenopause and we don't have that nice cycle, and this is where we're going to go now, is, okay, so it's not always obvious. The way that we biohacked before, or as we were approaching perimenopause, may look different, because the stressors that we have in a life, and when I say stress, I mean all, both good and, challenges in our lives. How do we, and what can we do? So let's explore some of the tools, or, you've alluded to quite a few of them already, but let's get into some specifics that you really want to share. Maybe some of the simpler and free ones that we have to start, and then we'll get more complex.
Yeah, it's always good to start with the free stuff. The thing is that free stuff sometimes isn't attractive to some people, because it may take a little bit more work. It may take a little bit more time. Everybody wants to pop a pill and get it over with. So we have to understand that we have to be patient. But I think one of the best tools that we have is our breath. And that's why I decided to study breath work and figure out how this works. And I chose the oxygen advantage because I wanted to understand the science behind it. I wanted to see, why is this working? What's happening in the body? Because I think then we can, at least for me personally, then I can understand better and more motivated to do things. And so there's many different types of breath work. It's like saying I do yoga or I teach yoga. Well, what kind of yoga? Because there's so many. So I only learned one type, but I think it's one of the most useful types. I think you can, what Patrick McCowan has taught us, and Patrick McEwen, sorry, I mixed his name up, but he's taught us, he wrote this book called The Oxygen Advantage, and it was actually really geared towards athletes and how to have a better performance. So great, if you are an athlete here, you can use your breath to be able to go farther, to lift more weight, to be stronger. I mean, who doesn't want that? And so you're using your breath for that purpose. But when you talk about being in perimenopause and menopause, this type of breath work, you can lower stress, you can change the physiology from within. And this is what I've learned from my gerontology classes, that there was a class on the mind body connection. It was the best course I took, and it talked a lot about stress and how we perceive stress, not that it's all bad, but it's your perception, and then how your body's processing it. Because if you need to have that optimized, because then it does have a physiological reaction, good and bad. So if we can control our heart rate, control cortisol levels, control hormones, we can control blood pressure, we can, to relieve ourselves of a headache, to be able to sleep better, to get rid of lower back pain, all these things that, wow, we don't need to go to a doctor and spend a bunch of money. We can really try to manage this on a day-to-day basis with our breath. And literally a biohacker, what we've been doing is taking our rings, our biostraps, and all our gadgets and trying to measure. And you can literally see in few minutes your heart rate coming down, and it's just magical. So what they say is quite true. It's really impressive. So I'm a big fan of using our breath for many things, and it's free. You just have to learn a very few basic techniques.
Do you want to share one with us?
Sure. So I like to teach the breathe light method. Breathing light is it's functional breathing. So I like it because this is the way we need to breathe every single minute of the day. Because you can go to a yoga class, do some pranayama breathing, you do it for an hour. Well, then what do you do for the other 23 hours of the day, right? I want to be able to incorporate something in my life and without having to take an hour out. So I think it's a really useful thing that can make a major impact on your health. So the way it is that the first thing you have to remember is become a nose breather. When we breathe through our mouth, this is when you have to start to breathe more through your chest. The biochemistry in the body is not optimized. We're not using this amazing filtration system that we have as our nose. So when you keep your mouth closed and you breathe in air through the nose, there's your little fibers in your hairs in your nose. That's this amazing filter. You have mucous membranes in there to trap viruses and bacteria. And it's so much easier for a bacteria or some pathogen to come into your mouth because the hole is so much bigger, right? It's much harder when it's closed, right? And and this is including when you exercise, which is hard because when you're running on the treadmill or you're riding your bike at a fast pace, you want to breathe through your mouth. So the idea is to keep it closed because you'll be less dehydrated and your blood will be more oxygenated. And when your blood is more oxygenated, you're able to have less lactic acid build up. You'll be able to go longer and stronger and faster and harder. So you're also getting more nutrients into the tissues and into the cells. There's a lot of other things that I won't go into, but that's why we need to become nose breathers. When we sleep, the same thing. So functional breathing, light breathing, is basically breathing through your nose and breathing low and slow. We don't need this huge big breath in order to bring in oxygen and oxygenate the blood. So what's happening is when you breathe light, you are, trying to go with me right now. It's just kind of close your mouth, breathe through your nose, and just pay attention to your breath, see where it's at. And what you want to do is try to slow it down. Okay. Slow down the breath a little bit. And you can measure with this amazing tool that we have is your finger, and you can put it under your nose and you can see the difference between when you breathe normally, you can feel the temperature, hotter air on your finger. You can feel the cooler air coming into the nostril, and you can feel the pressure coming into your finger as well. You can see how fast or slow that air is coming in and out. But when you slow down the breath, you can see that there's less pressure. The temperature is not as hot, and you're able to control a little bit more. So that gives you a little gauge, a little measurement without having to spend money on 300 euros on a ring or something, right? You can see right away with your finger. And when you slow it down, I want you to slow down the breath a little bit. You'll get to a point where you are feeling air hunger. And air hunger is that desire to take a deep breath. But the game is to have a tolerable air hunger. So it helps some people to count, to inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1, inhale for 4, and exhale for 6. The reason behind exhaling a little bit longer is because that's when we're able to stimulate the vagus nerve, which is the nerve that runs from your brain all the way down to your belly. It's the main highway that's connected to all the other nerves in the body, which are connected to all of the organs in the body. And when we're able to stimulate it in a positive way, it sends a signal to relax because it's safe and you're okay. And then it's just chilled out. It's the parasympathetic nervous system that's activated, and we're able to relax more. So when we're able to do that, you start to feel that, I think I could take a deep breath now, but I can tolerate it. And when you get that signal, you are building up carbon dioxide into the bloodstream. Okay, there's a buildup of that, right? It's the opposite of what happens when you're running on a treadmill, running, and you're exhaling all that carbon dioxide, or you're doing a Wim Hof method and you're exhaling all of that. So you're getting rid of carbon dioxide. And the key to this is that when you have a buildup of carbon dioxide in the bloodstream and you get that signal, hemoglobin, which is in your red blood cells and it's running through your blood cells, and it's carrying 98% of the oxygen in the bloodstream, right? It's connected to carbon dioxide. So when you are exhaling like that, hemoglobin and oxygen are holding on to each other real tight. It's a real tight bond. But when you slow down the breath, when you calm yourself down, when you breathe through your nose, and there's this buildup of carbon dioxide in the bloodstream, hemoglobin releases the oxygen into the bloodstream, and that's oxygenated blood. And that's incredible. So that's what we want to do. We want to get to that point where we have oxygenated blood. You'll just be healthier and you'll be in a better condition. So that's why we want to keep it. That's the connection with carbon dioxide. Not that the Wim Hof method and exhaling like carbon dioxide is a bad thing. It's just not something you want to do all the time. It's stimulating the nervous system and all that. If you're looking to calm down, relax, and have better sport performance, breathe through your nose. I know it's hard sometimes when you're training, but you get used to it. So practice that and let me know how it goes.
Yeah, it's a really progressive, and while you can progress it's surprising how you could progress quite quickly actually, but those initial weeks are what one might say painful.
Yeah.
Only because it is really allowing yourself and taking in the experience of, I'm safe, I have enough oxygen, and like what you mentioned, this air hunger. So fascinating, and thank you for sharing that. It's a really important component of, at the foundation of what we do is our breath work, and that is considered a biohacking to another level to optimize. What are some others? Let's go into the more complex tools, and we can think about like aura rings, of which I think we both all have, to track our sleep and our heart rate and our heart rate variability. There's the continuous glucose monitors, blood analysis. So can you talk to us a little bit more about some of these tools, how we can use them, and how we want to stay out of overwhelm with them too?
I know.
Overwhelm of data, and how do we actually think of them as tools to optimize and not feel like, oh my goodness, how do I deal with all of this?
I know, you're right. It all depends. All these gadgets and all these tools depends on the goal. Like, are you looking to optimize sleep? Are you looking to optimize
Mm.
sport performance, or your glucose levels? There's so many. So first we have to put in the context, who are we talking about? What is your goal? Right? If you're talking to a perimenopausal woman, or woman going through menopause, and you want to know more about your hormones, then let's do a Dutch test. Let's dry urine test. This is really great. I recommend every woman to do something like that, because you've got to know where you're at, where are your hormones going, how are they fluctuating, and even that's a moving target. Like, it's kind of hard, but I like the Dutch test because it takes a little bit deeper dive rather than just get a blood test and see where you're at. And that's, again, measuring. That's for women going through menopause, one of the first things that you want to do. So, but if you are talking about, you want to manage your blood sugar levels, because Dr. David Sinclair, I'll never forget, he, in one of his books, he said that one of the biggest, it was, I don't remember how he said it, was like the most biggest influencer of how fast or how slow you age is your blood sugar levels, like knowing your fasting glucose, I think was what it was exactly said. But so that's quite important. If you say, oh, I want to live a long life and I got to figure out where I'm at, because you don't want to get into the diabetes mode, and then it's much harder to reverse all these things. And you can, but it's just hard, so try not to get there in the first place. So you may want to monitor your blood glucose. So again, what is the goal? I think I would say before choosing a gadget, and again, to not be overwhelmed, just choose one, go with it. There's a very interesting, I'm a podcaster, so I interview all these people in this world of biohacking women 50 plus. And I just did the last interview with Glycan Age. It's a biological age test kit. So if you're like, oh, I just want to age slower, or do know where my age is, that's a really interesting thing. They measure glycans, which they explain what that is if you do that. But what I really was excited about, what they told me, which hasn't come out yet, is they're going to do a meno age. And that's going to tell you, or woman going through menopause, where are you in your journey towards menopause, right? Because
Oh, wow.
menopause is just one point in time. That's the day, 1 year after you haven't had your last period. And it's kind of like a all in retrospect, but like, okay, I'm here. But a lot of women don't know that they're going through it way before that. And so it's in perimenopause is those 5 years up until the menopause day of menopause, right? So in some women, it's early more, in some women it's less, but in general it's about 5 years. That's perimenopause. And then there's premenopause, which is way before that. And perimenopause can happen to women in their 30s as well, or mid 30s, and you don't even know it. But generally it's in your 40s at some point, and then somewhere around your 50s you'll get into that menopause point, and then you're post-menopause. And so we have to also understand the terminology when it comes to menopause, because it's very confusing, and nobody's preparing you for this. It's like when we were 13 again, going, oh, we're going to have our period, and what's going to happen? You hear there's blood, but you're not really sure what's going on. And it's the same thing for me, repeated over again when we hit menopause. Like, what's going to happen? You talk to all your friends and try to figure it all out. But we're hopefully getting beyond that, and that's what I want to do. It's what Dr. Stacey Sims is doing, and the Hit Play Not Pause group and Feisty Menopause group, where all these women going through this transition and trying to talk about it so that no one's lost. And so that's hopefully we're going to be by the time anyone who's listening here or watching in their 30s, they'll be well prepared by the time they hit perimenopause.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's fascinating how much the landscape has changed just in the past number of years. When I first started doing my research, it was hard to find books, hard to find anything, research articles. And I was diving deep and had to dive deep to find stuff. And the face of perimenopause was mostly the postmenopause. It wasn't of the younger 35-year-old, because it can hit as early as 35. It wasn't even the 40-year-old. It was older than that. And not that, that, thank goodness we had the wisdom, and that these women who were writing these books started to share and use their voice. And now we do have these other, voices that are coming, like, we can be active and we can lift heavy shit, and we can do high intensity, and we can be strong, and we don't want to give up. It's amazing. It's truly amazing. Okay, so the next question to that though is, so you mentioned, so just to summarize, really know what your goal is, understand how you're going to use the tool is essentially what you're saying, and whether it be a ring. But one of the things is use the tool, right? It's just like, I have so many interactions with athletes that have got and have bought 20 million gadgets and haven't got a clue how to use them and why to use them. Like, we've got watches and heart rate monitors and rings and all these things. And it's like, okay, now what? So when you come into the practice, and maybe I want to open it back up to make this into a question, not a statement, but like, so as you come into the practice, how do you bring in this intentionality of biohacking and this idea of, you don't, like, when in preparation for this interview, we talked about the blood glucose monitor, the continuous blood glucose, and you mentioned it's not forever. It's just to understand a piece.
Yes.
Talk just a little bit about that, because I think it's an important thing that you had said.
Yeah, depends. Yeah, again, the gadget depends what you use it for, and like the continuous blood glucose monitor, I love. It's a 2-week experiment on yourself. You're the N of one, no one else is involved, and what you do is it's a little I don't know, quarter size thing that you put on your arm. It's got a little needle in there. It's not you don't feel anything. It's not a big deal, but it'll tell you. It measures the interstitial fluid, and it gives you data, and you learn how to read the data. And there's plenty of apps out there that help you make it easier. And you can see how your food, how your sleep, how your exercise, how your stress is impacting your glucose levels. So, and what I was fascinated, because I've led groups of people through this process, and because as a health coach, I like to get them on there, because my clients will say, so should I eat rice or not eat rice? Should I eat bread or not eat bread? And I'm like, I don't know. I can't say no, carbs are bad for you or something. That's not at all. I could never say that. What you do find out in these glucose monitors is that maybe some people are sensitive to wheat, and their blood glucose levels goes through the roof when they eat something, or when they eat oatmeal or whatever, whereas the next person has absolutely no effect, no problem. So we can't say, oatmeal is going to make your blood sugar rise and fall. And just because it rises and falls doesn't mean it's a bad thing either, right? We want to be able to have it in the sort of optimal range. And that's what these glucose monitor does. So I love the glucose monitor. It's not expensive. It's a 2-week experiment, and you get a lot of information from it. And it's not just about food. I've had clients who, they've showed me their blood glucose levels just spiking and, coming down and going kind of crazy at 2 a.m. And I'm like, what's going on? Are you eating like a bag of Doritos or something like at night?
Yeah.
And he's, no, I had a phone call, and it was kind of an emergency. And then I went to bed right after, and I was like, aha, there's your stress. And the client was like, I had no idea that my stress would actually increase my blood sugar levels, even though I haven't eaten anything for the last, 8 hours or something. So it's a real eye opener, I think, for a lot of people. And we can talk about it all day long, but until they get that on their arm and see the data yourself, they won't really understand. It just kind of in the air. So I love that blood glucose monitor, because it's accessible, it's affordable, and it gives you so much data just on you. And again, like any other gadget, I have to say, nothing is 100% accurate. They're just not, right? So, but it does give you an idea. There are trends that we look at the trends. So I want to tell people, don't take it all with a little grain of salt. Don't take it as, the be all end all. I mean, these are just home gadgets. You're not plugged into a huge machine in a lab where
Yeah.
it's much more accurate. So we have to keep that in mind. And the more important thing is to look at the trends that's happening. That's what I do when it comes to gadgets. And
Mhm.
then again, to not be overwhelmed, I like the blood glucose monitor. And then you have other gadgets that, again, you also may use for a short period of time just to get to know yourself. And then you could put it to the side and say, I'm fine until the next experiment, and you can get that
Yeah.
gadget again and put it on and not be a slave to these
Mhm.
devices and the data.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because it could be really for the shifts, like utilize the tools in the shifts when you need you're trying your best, because sometimes we're trying our best to come in tune. Like I can just see it, like, okay, I'm trying to feel it, I'm trying to understand it, I'm trying to have awareness of it, and sometimes it's like it's hard. So these tools that you're speaking to can really aid in bringing out the physiological body responses, concrete, like visual. So if you need something to see and you're going through a shift, that's maybe an optimal time to use it. Get the data you need, move on. Don't
Yes,
stay
and
fixated within it.
And
Yeah.
one point thing you pointed out, I think is really important too with these gadgets. They can help you dial into your body. Because I always like to try to tell people, what is your body telling you? Your body's constantly talking to you through
Yeah.
your skin, through your
Always.
breath, through the way you feel, your stomach. I mean, we always tend to ignore these things and go, oh, it's just getting older, whatever, and we throw out the window. But no, your body's talking to you. So these gadgets can help you dial in. Sometimes I ask my clients how do you feel after you eat that cake? And they're like, I don't know. I feel like I always feel like fine. But then when you put that glucose monitor on, they may go, oh yeah, actually I was really tired right after that cake or whatever it was that made their blood sugar completely stop. One thing I thought with me was very interesting, and I never even thought about what to feel until I was wearing the glucose monitor, is when I was going hypoglycemic. And so at night while I was sleeping, and I would wake up, and in the morning I would look at my glucose monitor and I could see I was going in the red. I was going down, like the blood sugar was going really down. And I was like, what in the world is that? And through time, I realized when that happened, I I would wake up in the middle of the night, almost kind of hungry, but not really sure, and kind of alert. And I was like, that's weird. And it would take me, I don't know, maybe half an hour or something to go back to sleep again. It was a micro awakening, but I was like, usually micro awakening, second or two and you're going to bed. But this was kind of lasting long. And I realized that was happening when my blood sugar was down. So I figured out I need to eat something before I go to bed. And as a biohacker, I was like, leave 3 hours before you go to bed.
Yeah.
But I'm an athletic woman, and I kind of go burn through it. And maybe that's a good hack for somebody who's maybe more sedentary, or I don't know, genetics also playing a role. But just for me personally, I realized this longevity hack was not really working for me. And what was happening when I was going hypoglycemic is pretty much your body trying to wake you up and say, hey, go eat something or get your blood sugar up because you're going into the red zone. And when you wake up and you're kind of hungry, I mean, I never felt, I mean, it's not, you don't really pay attention to that. You sort of, whatever, just go back to sleep, not a big deal.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, oh, wow, I'm making that connection because I wore the blood glucose monitor. And then I figured out I never would have thought of that on my own.
I think that you've just pointed out to something that is so absolutely critical, and I really want to hone in on it. It's this idea. So what I'm fascinated by, and what I bring forth for a lot of within my work and my clients, is this intersection of health and performance. And so, yes, like you just said, this idea of for longevity is, the rest and digest, creating the space before you go to bed so that, you don't want to eat right before you go to bed because it's going to, spike your sugar levels, yada, 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 yada. And yet you found specifically that you were going hypoglycemic. You needed to eat before going to bed. And that is your N of 1 longevity piece, because we know that sleep is the foundation of everything. So if we can keep on in a healthful space, maybe not for always, maybe your metabolism may shift. It likely will again and again and again. But for right now, that gave you the clue. And so it is finding that where the health and the performance are intersecting. And that's what allowed you. It's so freaking perfect. Oh my goodness. Thank you.
Another actually example of that performance and longevity and all this stuff. So in my gerontology course, one of my professors was Dr. Walter Longo, and he's known for the fasting mimicking diet. And he's done some incredible studies on longevity and how he's made mice and yeast and all these kind of worms like triple their lifespan, and you're going, wow, that's amazing. So he's really well known in the longevity world, and so it was an honor to be learning from him. And I was so excited about this class, and the class was, I'd say, like 80-90% women, mostly in their 30s, and so there was a lot of question, because his big thing is don't eat too much protein. Protein is activating the pro-aging pathways, activating mTOR. These are really, so we all were protein phobes in this class, and because protein was the big evil, so we would always ask these questions like, well, what about athletes? What about athletic people who need to what about, and so his thing is protein is evil, until you hit 65, and then 65, you need to eat more, because, and so when I took the Dr. Stacy Sims course and I threw this at her, I was like, how do we find this balance? Like, I don't want to be a frail person without muscle mass, and I want to be strong. I want to lift heavy shit. I want to be able to do this. And if I keep my protein levels low, Stacey
or longevity,
very pro protein, and so it's very confusing. Like I want it all. I want to live a long life, and I want to be healthy, but I don't want to be frail. So he was always avoiding really that question. We never got like a direct answer, because that's not his research. He's not interested in athletic women. So, okay, that's what we get. But Dr. Sims was interesting enough. The way she explained it, she said that when you're athletic, it sort of deactivates those pro-aging pathways. So she said it so eloquently, and she explained the science. I just can't remember exactly how she explained it. I just remembered, okay, we're all right eating protein again, as long as we're athletic. And so we need that component. So it is, again, get that balance. Dr. Walter Longo, when we asked about that, athletes, we said, well, what if we're working with an athlete, and what do we tell them? And he said, well, you have to tell them that the risks, and then they have to have the minimum amount of protein in order to get their, be an athlete, whatever that is. That was kind of the answer we got. And what that number is, or that level is, then, as nutritionists, and, this is where, people are taking this course, that's where what you have to do. So, again, I would say it can be very confusing, especially if you're an athletic woman and then you're reading this longevity stuff, because the longevity stuff is not geared to an athletic woman.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating because, and I know we're going to go over time here, but Dr. David Sinclair, you brought up his name as well, and he's also a proponent of more vegetable-based proteins, which are harder to get your protein levels up to the level for which we know as athletes we're trying to get to. And it was all about actually not activating mTOR, which we know from Dr. Stacy Sims that we want to activate mTOR. And to do that, we need at least 40 grams of protein, not less protein. So I'm right there with you. And this is, again, the intersection between health and performance. But when my research and to try to understand this complexity, which you're speaking to, it really looks at the timing and the acuteness of it. And what we're trying to do as athletes is to respond to the stress. Yes. So when we're thinking about, so to answer this question and to add on to your response from what Dr. Stacy Sims was saying is, from my understanding is, we look at it in terms of, yes, the big picture, but it's not just one or the other. When we're athletes, we have to respond to the stress we need to rebuild with protein. For the nourishment of our bodies, yeah, we want to think about this, but you don't switch on and off athlete very quickly. Like if you're in a continuous program of athleticism, we're always looking to optimize because we want to keep stressing. Like it's such a brain twist. We want the stress. We need the stress. We want to keep our muscle. As we're approaching perimenopause and beyond, we need to keep stressing. Otherwise, we lose it. And therefore, that's why our protein, our intake, and our activation of mTOR is to respond to the stress, not necessarily on the general population. And so I think that, I mean, I'm adding on to your response that you did really well a little bit further, but I think that this is what's become so fascinating.
Yes.
And okay, so we're definitely over time, but I have to bring in this one other piece that I know is really important to you, especially in the work that you're doing right now with the Ukrainian refugees. And there is one other piece that you wanted to share about how do we really tap into this deep reservoir of energy? And can you just share and, take the time that you want to share this foundation principle that you are really experiencing right now?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, the foundation that we all everyone here has heard about over and over again is the sleep, stress, exercise, and you eat, right? These are very important things, but not a lot of people talk as much about the mental health and wellness, about the community and the importance of having social networks, which is a huge topic in gerontology, and understanding how people live longer and better. And also having a purpose in life, right? If you're getting to an age and there's no reason to wake up in the morning, well, then, you're going to have a downtrending lifespan, right? So we have this word in Japanese called ikigai, and ikigai means the reason to wake up in the morning, and that's having that purpose in life is so important. I'm creating a program now called Energy, Reboot Energy for Women 50 plus, and because that's stereotypical. As we age, we lose our energy, and there's a lot of reasons why that's happening physiologically, but we can hack a lot of stuff through this component, or this pillar, this community pillar, this social pillar, this purpose pillar, whatever you want to call it. And so what energizes people, there are many things that can energize someone, but what's energizing me right now is that purpose. And my purpose in this moment is to help Ukrainian refugees. I'm Ukrainian. My mother is from Ukraine. I'm an American Ukrainian, so I feel it's something that's deeply touching me. And when this war started, the first thing that any Ukrainian does, or anyone who has any kind of Ukrainian blood, is to go and help, right? And it happens if you're Syrian, it happens if you're whatever it is that culture you're in, you're going to want to help your people. And that's touched me right now. So I decided to join a convoy of taxi drivers and policemen from Spain to drive from Spain to Poland and back 7,000 kilometers, 7 days, bringing humanitarian aid, medicine, clothes, and food to Poland, and then bring back refugees with us, and where we have worked with an agency that finds homes for them temporarily to help them survive and get on their feet until they can go back home. That's all these refugees want to do, is go home, but they cannot right now. So that's really filling up my energy bucket. I have been for 7 days driving a car, sleeping in a car, helping the refugees, and it's 3 hours of sleep, no exercise, crappy food, or gas station stuff. Like, it's just everything that you should be doing to shorten your lifespan and die early. And so, okay, luckily this is only 7 days. But I have so much energy. I don't know. I can drive the car from 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. and I don't know where the energy is coming from, but it's coming from this purpose, this dedication, and this, if you can find that passion, that purpose, like that'll keep you going forever and ever. Now, I couldn't do this type of lifestyle for a
Yeah.
long time, but I can certainly serve that passion, that purpose in many, many other ways. And that's what's keeping me going. But I was really surprised how I didn't get sick. Everyone got sick and that trip, because your immune system is totally falling
It's
apart.
tanking. Yeah.
But I've
Yeah.
got some hacks under my sleeve, and,
Uh,
and I'm so far so good, so I'm recuperating and recovering. Just like you said, any stressor, when you're exercising, it's a stress. I totally stressed out my body, but you need to recover. And so I'm in that recovery period now, and that's where, especially when you get older, you need a little bit more time to recover. And I think that's something that is, even as an athlete, you got to accept too. You may go, oh, you just need 1 day to recover, and I go, well, now maybe you need 2. I don't know. Everybody's different, but you got
and it's
to,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
acknowledge it, and listen to your body. Your body ultimately will tell you that it needs to recover. You just have to listen to it
Yeah.
and do what it says.
So amazing. So that's a perfect segue. Thank you. Into acknowledging first this other passion you have. You are in Spain. You've made time for this. You're making time for us. You're making time to share this passion and for supporting women in 50 plus in biohacking and being and living their best life. Was there one moment in time in which you realized like you were a website designer, or like you were doing a very different life, and then you switched, like you can see it in your bio, and then she switched? What was that piece for you, or was there a moment for you?
It was one moment, but maybe it was a progression. And so I was in the health optimization or longevity world, or health wellness, whatever you want to call it, right? Just like everyone else. And then I started to learn more about biohacking, and I said, this is interesting. And when Clubhouse came out, that's sort of when the Biohacking Women 50 plus came around, because when the pandemic hit, I started podcasting. I found a group of women who are my age, I'm 51, and are biohacking, or, doing kind of the same stuff I am, but we all had a different take, and we all connected really well. And we realized, wow, there is a group of women who are older, and we realized that our needs are different than the Ben Greenfield biohacker, or the young men biohacker. And no one's talking about menopause, and those guys are not interested in hormones. And, there's not a lot of chatter there. And we're just like blown away. And that's our world. Right. So that's when I started the Clubhouse. I just named it Biohacking Women 50 plus, because that's who we were. And now we realize that we are a different group, and and what a lot of these women are doing, because of the biohacking world, they're disrupting aging stereotypes. And that's what I love. And in gerontology, we realize that ageism and ageist stereotypes are actually shortening lifespans. And there's a whole cycle, which I won't get into, but it's really important for our own health span, our own lifespan, that we disrupt these stereotypes. And that's why I love Stacey Sims and the Hit Play Not Pause and Feisty Menopause group, because they are showing that you can be athletic, you can be strong, and you can win marathons and races at 50, 60, 70. And that's unbelievable. So I want to look at those people and say, look, aging women, aging men, there are all kinds. There's a huge variety. Actually, we're very diverse people, and society has made old people into one stereotype, and that's what we think, and that's not correct. And I'm not saying, that those stereotypical people are not there. They're there, and that's fine. But there's a whole other group of people out there who are hacking their age, who are disrupting their stereotypes. And that's what I want to show with my channel. I want to show through the work that I do, and inspire those people that menopause is not a death sentence, and 60, 70 doesn't have to be the stereotypical person that we see or we think about. And we can get inspired by the people who are lifting heavy weights, like
Yeah.
Joe McDonald, you know, who's training with Joan, and she's 75, and she only started lifting weights at 70. I mean, you can start at any age. So I find these people really inspiring.
Yeah.
You know, the 30s and 40-year-olds will look at me and go, wow, you know, you're doing so many amazing things at 50, because they have this stereotype that a 50-year-old woman should be doing something else, or is in another place. And I'm looking at those 60 and 70-year-olds just the same way, saying, what are you doing? Because I want to be like you when I'm 70. And so I want to bring more of these people into the spotlight to inspire everybody and show that you can do so much, whether you have menopause, post-menopause, what doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's up to you. You are in control, and you can do whatever you want, and you just live the life that you want to be, and live the life that you want to have, right? Not just follow a stereotype because you think that's going to happen. And that's a really dangerous point when you start to reinforce those stereotypes in yourself. That's a real dangerous point. So we want to not have that happen, disrupt ageism and ageist stereotypes.
So disrupt and be the N of one.
Yeah.
So perfect. All right. You have a free gift that you're giving. It's called the Longevity Master Plan. You're giving an incredible body of work to us. Do you want to just share with the listeners just a little bit more about that, so that they can click on the link and they have a code that makes it free, which is just blow your mind. Thank you for that. Just share a little bit about that so they know what they can get from you.
Yes, this is like a 400-page digital document, so you're going to be ready for it. But it's also very large print, right? So don't worry about that. But I show the 5+1 pillars of aging, which is, you know, I've got 5 sort of foundation, very important pillars. And then the +1 is a beauty one, because you don't need that to live a longer life, but you need all the other 5.
Yeah.
The beauty is just a fun thing. And I really want to, you know, include that. So you'll go through, it's a step-by-step guide as well. So if you're like, I want to hack my age, you know, let's start with the first pillar, and then you go in through the rest. And so you learn why say sleep is so important. You'll learn how to get techniques. I'll have an action plan for you, so you can pull out different techniques and try them on yourself. And then I also have a day in the life of Zora, which is, you know, starting from the time I wake up until the time I go to bed. Like, what do I do? If you just want an example, how do I incorporate those hacks into my life? You can take it or leave it. And then there are some recipes as well that you can do to get better sleep. And then I've got a whole cookbook component that's going with it. So you have their longevity recipes. So I include all the longevity ingredients. I explain why you need cordyceps or something in your life, and how to incorporate that into your life. So you got lots of tools, lots of different you know, kitchen detox, how to detox your kitchen and get on the fast track to longevity, what you want to incorporate in your life every day. It's so full. So be ready. It is not just a little pamphlet. It is the whole book. I'm giving away the whole book, and I'm really happy to share with you guys. And if you have questions about it, it's so easy to get in touch with me, and I'm happy to help you and answer any questions.
Well, all your links are on your page. Thank you so much for this incredible conversation. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed it. I know that our listeners will have enjoyed it as well. And hackmyage.com, that's where you're going to find Zora. Thank you for being here. Thanks for making the time and to share your passion, because it is truly, I know that you've got a lot going on in the support of your community and your families, and yeah, just to create this space for us too is really appreciated. So thanks.
Oh, thank you for having me and acknowledging that. So #gratitude.